Hey, hi folks. Hopefully we're live. So we'll just wait for a few people to dive in the chat and confirm that we're live, which is always good. I'll just refresh my screen as well a second. So it's Thursday, basically, Thursday, Halloween, 31st of October, which is quite exciting. I know that most people, or lots of people, have got plans for like this evening. If you've got children, I guess it's plans to take them out trick-or-treating. And if you haven't got children, then it's generally a night in, probably in front of the fire, a few drinks, that kind of thing, or maybe going out with friends. So I thought we'd just sort of cover, again, some of the kind of basics around just staying safe, really, and having fun. Obviously, we're kind of SRA, Spirit Release Academy. We're all about kind of protection, all about spiritual release. And we spend most of our time talking about protecting ourselves, families, friends, and home environment, really, from that perspective, from a spiritual perspective, certainly. So Halloween, obviously, being the evening, the kind of one evening of the year that I guess for most people the veil is the thinnest, really. And of course, this is a night that we all know that kind of films dictate that the spooks and the ghouls are out, spirits are wandering about, and that means there's lots of things generally going on outside of the house that kind of puts you at more risk, really, from a spiritual perspective. So we wanted just to kind of cover, or just plan to cover, some of the things we can do, just have a general chat about those sorts of things, and obviously to do it in a kind of fun way, because we're all about doing things from a protective perspective, but not from a kind of fear-mongering and negative perspective. So again, it's just thinking about the things that you do. If you're going to be out walking around the streets, then obviously it's good to know that whilst you're out walking around the streets, that you're protecting yourself, really. So from my perspective, it's kind of like this spooky energy is in the air. So really, there's a few things to think about, I guess, when you're going out this evening. So the first thing is intention. So setting clear intentions. So depending upon the type of Halloween festival that you're joining, set your intention to have fun, to have a good night, to make it a positive experience, to have a laugh, to enjoy yourself, basically, and keep your energy protected. So even simple things like intentional phrases, I only invite positive energy and light into my experience tonight, would be that type of thing. Or, I'm working for the highest of light, the highest of vibration, and I invite my guides to protect me. So just thinking about different intentional quotes and statements that you can invoke before you go out effectively to kind of make that night as good as possible, which would be the sort of thing I'd be thinking about. I was going to say hi to Amanda. Thanks for joining me, Amanda. You're the first one in to confirm that I'm not talking to myself and that I am actually live, which is always nice. So we're just talking about Halloween being spooky. Maria's joined as well. So hi, Maria. Thanks for coming in. So we're just going to go through some of these things, basically, to kind of make a kind of fun night, effectively, because it should be a fun night. And it's just making sure that we're in that space. Hi to Jennifer as well. Thanks for joining and dropping in. So intention is the first thing. So if you're going to go out, you need to be setting the intention that you can have a good night, it's going to be a positive experience, and you're going to be protected. And to protect yourself, obviously there are things that we can do. Also, we can obviously engage the guides, because as most of you kind of aware, really watching us from a kind of Spirit Release Academy perspective, we're all about working with spirit. So we don't do things on our own. We work in teams of two, one being a facilitator, one being a medium, and the medium has access to a spirit guide that they can communicate with. So when you guys go out tonight, you're going out with children and friends walking around, your guides will be with you effectively, kind of in the unseen. If you've got telepathy online, you can talk to them. But of course, they are with you. So again, stating your intention that you asking your guide to be with you and provide you with protection is also a good way to start the evening. And then to think about a kind of protective barrier. So I'd be thinking about visualizing a kind of bubble of white light that I would be inside of, or you could visualize a shield of light that surrounds you. So picturing yourself inside a bubble that keeps anything negative and unwanted on the other side, on the outside really, of that bubble is obviously a good way to start. Let's say hi to Jana. Thanks for coming in, Jana. Again, we can renew the shield. When we talk about kind of protection from a ritualistic perspective every day, so every morning, every day, all of our practitioners are thinking protection, and the facilitators that aren't mediums are still doing their own protection. So thinking about yourself being inside a protective barrier, basically a bubble of light, or carrying some sort of shield of white or golden light that surrounds you, is obviously a thing that you could do every day, but certainly on Halloween, and certainly if you're going to be going out and around your area where you live this evening, then that definitely needs to be something to consider, really. Then for me, think carrying stones. So again, anything black, I quite like the idea of. So I tend to wear like a shungite bracelet. So things like black tourmaline, obsidian, jet, amethyst, all of those things tend to be quite protective. So just pop one of those in your pocket. And again, we know that crystals vibrate at a high frequency, and it's an energetic vibration. And of course, then they effectively naturally kind of deflect negativity. So they're going to help keeping you grounded, secured, and protected. And like you say, you can just pop them in your pocket. And most people who watch these podcasts, I'm sure, have probably got a whole box of crystals at home, because it tends to be one of the first things that you get into from a spiritual perspective. When you start to arrive on your spiritual path, then you align with crystals. Let's say hi to Adriana. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. And the next thing, really, if you're going to go out tonight and you're thinking about your space and your costume, so just doing a quick clearing of yourself, maybe like a sage, Palo Santo, some essential oils, frankincense, lavender, anything that you like, really. So if you've got a costume to wear, you can give it a kind of light, energetic cleanse just by visualizing yourself in a protective light, or put a protective bubble of light around the costume. And obviously you can spritz yourself with those sorts of oils, again, lavender, frankincense, that type of thing. Effectively smudging your costume, smudging yourself, just clearing away any kind of stagnant, low vibrating negative energy, setting your intention for a positive day, positive evening, a positive night out during the kind of Halloween festivities is a good plan, really. So we're going to kind of move on. Just going to say hi to you, Anya. Thanks for joining. Happy Boo Day. Boo Day. It is a Boo Day. So I think Jane's downstairs ready for Boo Day. So we've got lots of chocolates, biscuits, sweets, and all the other things in. In fact, what we used to do actually is quite funny. When we used to get the small children come, we would obviously give them the kind of nice things. And then when the teenagers turned up, we'd give them apples. Because teenagers generally don't really fancy apples. So we used to go to the door and say, oh, thanks for trick-or-treating, so you can have an apple. And they generally disappear and scoot quite quick, which is quite funny. Just going to say hi to Erin. Thanks for joining, Erin. Good to see you. Jennifer's saying that she still shielded her daughter and sent the guide to, yep, perfect. That's exactly the plan, really. Is put your daughter in a bubble of light and then send her off with a guide to kind of watch her back. And that is the kind of guarantee, really, that she has some level of spiritual protection to enjoy the evening, which is exactly what we're kind of here to discuss and talk about. So again, if we look at kind of like mindfulness and engagement, really, so in terms of Halloween themes, we all know that Halloween now kind of on TV is going to be horror and violence related, lots of dark rituals, lots of dark imagery in the TV films that are on TV for children and teenagers as well. And of course, these sorts of films change the vibration and they attract negativity because they're low vibrating, fear-based films. So again, it's just thinking about what you're going to watch, or what your children are going to watch, or what's on. If you're kind of doing tea, doing your normal chores, and the kids are sat watching TV, it's just sort of filtering what's on, really, so they're not seeing anything particularly negative, because that will obviously attract negative energy into their space, and your space as well, of course. So just stay mindful about what you're engaging with from an energetic perspective is obviously a good plan. And then again, from our perspective, in SRA, we do this every day. I read my clients' summaries every day, of which there's lots, and the number of people that have problems with using Ouija boards is very high. So again, if you're going to use sort of divination tools today, where the veil is the thinnest and there's obviously more negativity, then just be very careful that if you're going to use Ouija boards, they can open doorways, portals, basically, that you don't know how to close potentially, or again, teenagers and children don't know how to close. So you're probably better off leaving things like Ouija boards alone. If you're going to do divination, then use oracle cards. I've always got kind of packs of oracle cards in front of me that I use for courses that I teach. So I've got kind of these packs here. This package from Patrick Gamble's one of my favourite packs, actually, which is quite good. I like him, actually, because they're just generally one-word cards. So things like that one, Dreamtime. So kind of easy things to read. You can have fun with them. You can pick a card for the evening. I'll just pick a card now and see what we get, which is interesting. So today's card was the Vision, which is quite cool. We're talking about a vision, I guess, being Halloween. So yeah, so oracle cards are good. And if you've got oracle cards, obviously you can use them with intention in any way you need to. But again, set the intention, ask the question. I used to kind of use them every morning and still do, really. So I used to put a thought out to my guide, Chen, even though I talk to him, but I still use cards. And just think about the day ahead. You know, is there a message in the card? And you pick a card from the oracle deck, and you kind of get that intuitive thought about the card. So I don't tend to go to the book for a reading of the card. I just tend to pick a card and then kind of go with my intuitive aspect to see what the guidance is and what it means. And it's quite interesting because when, of course, you start to use cards more often, quite often 2 or 3 days in a row, you pick the same card. So from a deck of 55, the probability to pick the same card 3 days in a row is obviously extremely low. So then I would kind of sit up and listen and think, okay, what is the message here? It's coming through pretty loud and clear that this card is coming up for me day after day. So I need to think about what that card means and why that would come forward. And you can have fun with cards, so it's kind of good to, but again, just to set intention. So it's going to say hi to Corey, I think it is. Yeah, Corey, Elaine, and Natasha's joined, which is cool. The boss is here. Natasha's like our sort of, well, Natara, we call them, John and I respectively. But the female bosses, effectively, of SRA, sat behind the scenes, keeping myself and Jono in line. So it's good to see you, Natasha. And I was just talking about Jono. So Jono's just gone under a knife again today, can you believe, on Halloween. So he's got an infection that they're going to remove. Well, it's been done, I think it was done this morning. So by now he's probably back in recovery. So we're going to send our best wishes, thoughts, guides, and healing and protection to Jono. Hopefully he'll soon make a quick recovery, as he tends to bounce back pretty fast. So so of all days to pick for an operation with a general anaesthetic, Jono picked the 31st of October, Halloween, which is quite funny, really. So we are thinking of him. He's in our thoughts, and obviously we'll send him healing energy and generally our positive vibes. So I'm just going to say hello to, I think there's Otorongo by the look of it. I'm a Biff fan and Cheddar New, which is always nice. Okay, so we'll move on. So Natasha's probably got lots of ideas of things I've forgotten. So you can remind me, Natasha, of things I haven't talked about in terms of protection for a spooky night of Halloween. So keeping yourself grounded, of course, is good. So spiritual grounding means we're grounding our spiritual energy into the planet, the center of the planet, basically, holding that vibration. So again, just visualizing grounding roots that grow from your feet down into planet Earth is a good thing. If you can't visualize, you can just think intentionally that I command that I ground myself, or you can ask your guides, I command that my guides ground my energy and ground me into the planet. So just grounding yourself is good. There's lots of excitement around tonight. Everyone's flying around, getting ready for a good evening. So being grounded is obviously a good thing to do. And you can take a few deep breaths and just chill, basically. Okay, so the veil. So we talk about the veil. I think the veil being the thinnest. And I think this is the thing for Halloween, really, is that this is the one night of the year that everyone tends to believe. The concept is that the veil, the boundary or the energetic divide, really, between the physical world and the spiritual world or the unseen realms is the thinnest. So this is where spirit can affect us more. And of course, if spirit can come into our space, then negative entities and other things can come into our space too. So spirits and other entities are passing between worlds basically this evening. Well, that's the kind of general gist. Again, from our perspective, for an SRA practitioner, it's kind of what we do every day. So Halloween isn't particularly special from my perspective. And I'm pretty sure from most of our practitioners' perspective, it's not particularly special either, because we are talking to spirit every day and we're dealing with spiritual things, spiritual problems, performing clearings on people spiritually. So our work is based on this every day. But of course, for the majority of the population, then obviously Halloween is this night whereby this boundary and energetic divide, comes together between the unseen and the seen, I guess. And it kind of goes back, I think, to I did some research on this because I wasn't exactly sure the kind of the history really of Halloween. So it's around the kind of ancient beliefs, and it originates from the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, and that kind of marked, I think, the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter. So a time associated with kind of death and darkness. So kind of summer's finished, we're into that kind of leaves are falling off the trees, the seasons are changing, and the harvest season's finished effectively. So that seasonal shift seems to be the kind of conversation around Samhain, which then later on became influenced and called Halloween effectively. And again, it's a significant time in the yearly cycle. So this is making a kind of transition between the light and the dark. So the light's leaving, effectively the darker days are coming, and it's growing shorter and colder. So ancient cultures believed that the energies of life and death were kind of more connected at this time, and obviously nature enters its dormant phase. So we knew that the leaves fall off the trees, sap obviously stops rising in the trees, and everything becomes quite dormant. And I guess nature does too. So we find out that hedgehogs hibernate, lots of other animals go into some sort of hibernation type phase at this time of the year. And this is where the boundary between the living really and the spirit world kind of weakens. So again, going back in time, Samhain was this time that we kind of honoured the dead or deceased ancestors, welcomed their spirits back for one night. So again, from your perspective, as people thinking about things spiritually, it's a time to think about your parents that may have passed, your grandparents or your great-great-grandparents or your friends, anyone that's passed over to spirit that you knew, that you kind of had a relationship with or had some sort of connection to. It's just sort of worth thinking that this is quite a good time for them to contact you, and obviously for you to contact them, even through thought, basically. So it is that time of the year that we can start to think about that kind of changing specific. Okay, so Honor and Des, just got a few notes here I was reading. Yeah, so yeah, of course, yeah. So in the past, there would have been fires. People would have lit fires, basically, in handheld rituals. So people were inviting the spirits of their loved ones to join them and come forward on that night. And it would have been a very kind of outside, connected cultural basis where we're trying to connect those two worlds, the spiritual and the physical. So again, if you're out and about, just kind of bear that in mind that your ancestors could be close, which could be good. And I think the Celts believed that they were both good, obviously, and sort of mischievous, negative spirits that were wandering around freely. So you think about when you're out and about with your children and you're doing trick or treating, you're probably walking past other energies and entities that kind of are in your space, and that's why it's so key, really, from our perspective, to make sure that you are protected. You're in your protected bubble of light. You've set your intention to go out and have a good night, and therefore you're kind of in a safe space, because you want to be protecting yourself from these sort of malevolent, negative forces, energies, and entities that are about. And obviously, setting intention and doing your protection is the key part of that, really. So, okay, let me just go back to the chat. So, Elaine saying, can I set my intention to protect a family member's home? Yeah, that's the thing, Elaine. You can set intention to do whatever you want, really, because it's intention based. So it's, even if your family members don't kind of believe in this type of thing or aren't interested in doing it themselves, you can still set your intention for them to be in a protected bubble of light, or you can visualize a bubble of white light over their house or over their car or over the children that walk together as a group. So protecting groups of people is the same concept. Again, you can just visualize them inside a bubble of white light, and again kind of invoking the guides, so invoking your spirit guides to be with your family, your friends, your people, your parents, grandparents, people that are on their own that may be scared when trick-or-treaters come knocking. It's kind of fine when you're younger, and obviously it's fun, but for older people it's probably a bit frightening. They live on their own, it's dark, they don't know who's coming to the door. There's obviously lots of scams and things that kind of run these days where people knocking the doors asking for money. So I guess for older people, it's probably quite a difficult time for them. And of course, they're going to be in that fearful vibration because they're going to be vibrating at that low frequency anyway, because already in fear. So effectively, protecting them or putting the thought out to protect them is a good thing. And then home-based protection, things that we can do really to keep these sort of mischievous, negative entities and spirits at bay. So salt protection's good. I know we talk about salt quite a lot from a kind of SRA perspective. So you can like sprinkle a line of sea salt around your doorways, windows, perimeters of your house. Salt basically kind of absorbs negativity and creates a good boundary. And people that are psychic and mediums actually see, well, I see entities stop at salt. So we sprinkle it around the house, we sprinkle it around our bed and things. And I've seen them walk in a room and just stop because they can't get past. So salt's really good. I mean, we tend to use sea salt, but of course any salt will do to a certain degree. So Himalayan salt, obviously the manufactured salt isn't really the same, but I guess it may have some sort of protective property. And Epsom salt may do the same, but again, we tend to stick with kind of sea salt or Himalayan salt that we're using from a kind of spiritually protective perspective. But if you think about it, you've also got things like herbs. So you've got rosemary, sage, lavender. All those things can be put in a salt mix. So you can put drops of oil. Anything you've got at home, basically, that we know is good from a kind of essential oil perspective or herbal perspective, we can mix into some type of potion. Just lay that and put it underneath your doormat or something that kind of creates and protects that doorway or that perimeter, basically. And then your house, you could obviously sage the house, so a light sage in Palo Santo, or again, sage or something. Just go around the corners, windows. You don't have to smoke the whole house out. I try and do that every so often, which I find annoys Jane intensely. But again, it's quite good fun. So I try and do it when she's out. But again, the smoke coming out of the windows, smoke's kind of coming out of everything. I quite like it. So, and again, it just kind of clears the house, makes it more energetically clear. You can feel the house becomes clearer when you sage it, obviously when you cleanse it in that way, because it's effectively like a spiritual purifying, but it purifies that low-level stagnant energy that doesn't need to be entity-based or anything like that. Just stagnant, stale energy is also cleared and removed. And obviously, again, we're talking crystals. So again, lots of crystals. You can place them outside the house. So black tourmaline, obsidian, jet, smoky quartz. There's a whole load of crystals that you can pick that you could leave outside. And obviously, they change the vibration. Affirmations, of course, we talked about, which is key. So protective affirmations about things like, I only allow energies of light, love and light to enter the room or enter the house, energies that do me no harm or wish no harm can cross the kind of threshold. So then just thinking about different kind of affirmations that are positive that basically stop negativity, which is what we're talking about, and it tends to be the key thing. I think, again, we can use things like mirrors. Mirrors are quite good to sort of place by the doorway. I know they use them in feng shui to kind of reflect things back out. So let's just go to the chat a minute. So Amanda's talking about selenite. So I use selenite quite a lot, actually, because selenite's got a high vibration. So I've got like a selenite wand that I kind of use quite often to clear things and just point things at. So you can kind of imagine a kind of vibration coming off the end of selenite, especially if it's a wand or a point. So yeah, selenite's good, as well as all the other tools and things that we have. There's Natasha saying, set your boundaries. Set your boundaries firmly with your intention. Realize that you're the boss. And if you say no, they have to comply. Exactly. It's just like being married, really, in one way or another. So Elaine's talking about wind chimes. So yeah, wind chimes are good. Again, they create sound. So sound is clearing. We also use tinctures quite a lot. So I've got tinctures that I keep in the room. I believe that that's basically so for me. Let's put it in front of the camera. Again, these are really good for sort of room clearing. I use them outside as well. But you can just quick ting. Obviously, that sound and vibration that you can hear, you can imagine those waves running around the whole room and just clearing the space, again, from a sound perspective. So tinctures are good, wind chimes are good, those sorts of things are quite cool. So, just look in the chat. So another thing I do quite often is kind of create like a protective essential oil mix with water. So we just use like normal water effectively, and then put some drops of oil in there. Again, things like frankincense, cedarwood, bergamot, anything you like that smells nice, basically. And then you can walk around the house just giving a quick light spray. You can spray a doorway. So you can open your front door tonight and just spray that mist outwards. And of course, that's going to create like a vapor boundary on that front door, which is always good. So bells and chimes are cool to do that type of thing with. There's a whole lot of things really we can do that just increase that level of protection slightly. And the fact that we're thinking about being protected, of course, means that effectively we have protection, because everything, as Natasha just said back there, was intention based. So if our intention is to protect our doorway, protect our space, protect our children that are walking around the streets, to protect our families, our grandparents that may live in different states, different places, different homes, if that's our intention, then those thoughts go out. And that, of course, thought, we know, manifests things on the astral. So as soon as you start thinking it, you create a thought, which then creates an energy on that astral, and the energy basically goes off to manifest the things that you've just done. And this is where, again, as we become quite spiritual, we start to think about spiritual development and the way that we develop ourselves from a kind of personal perspective. It's all about kind of getting control of your emotional state and your thought process. If you allow yourself to drop into a fearful, anxious state, then of course anxiety is a negative emotion, which generally is kind of like a fear-based feeling, fear-based emotional state, and that brings our vibration down, and we want to bring our vibration up. So learning to get control of your thoughts and just push away negative ones and only focus on the positive ones, or override negative ones that may come into your mind with positive ones. So when you start to worry about things, just override it with a positive thought and change it in that way. And the more we start to do this, generally the better and the faster we get at kind of controlling our thoughts. Because of course, emotions have thoughts connected. And we kind of know this when we watch a film. If we watch a TikTok reel or Facebook reel or something on animals, you can easily be brought to tears by something that you think is amazing to watch. One animal looking after another one, or an animal being rescued from sort of, more or less guaranteed death, will generally bring most people to tears really quickly. So that image creates an emotion, basically, and it creates a thought, effectively. And this is why imagery is so important, and we need to be very careful about the things that we watch and the things that we allow to percolate into our kind of field, because, again, thoughts become things, as they say. So images are really important to control. And one of the things I used to do years ago, when I used to see negative things, I was talking to negative entities generally, they put negative pictures in your mind. And I used to see like a kind of horrific picture in my mind, and then I would change that picture to be a small mouse, and it would make me laugh, because I'd be talking to something negative, it would be trying to scare me. And, you do go into kind of like a fear-based reaction quite quickly, but then I would immediately change the thought to be like this tiny small mouse, basically, that I could step on, and then I'd laugh to myself in my mind. And just by laughing to myself would change my vibration and emotional state. And then that entity would just back off immediately, because you've changed the vibration. So they're trying to control you in a negative way with negative imagery. But if you just overlay that with positive imagery, the thought process changes, your vibration comes up really quickly, and then you take control back. So trying to get control of your thought process is obviously good. So the other thing I think we can talk about, probably candles again. I think people have talked about candles. So again, candles can be burnt with intention. Obviously, witchcraft uses candles in the past, and lots of people can identify with lighting a white candle for purification. Or so I think witchcraft, a black candle was for kind of banishing things. So people would burn a black candle with the intention to banish negativity or push negativity back. So again, if you're thinking about candles, or you come from that kind of witchcraft space, you would know anyway. But again, you can put candles in entryways or certain rooms that you want protection in, set them to burn for a period of time with the intention to banish or to purify. So again, black tends to be banishing, white tends to be purification. Okay, I'm just going through this list. As Dr. Punnell said, I'm not having it. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Terry was quite funny, actually. When we first started to work together and we started to connect to entities, negative entities, I quite enjoyed it, because I quite liked talking to them, even though it was a bit of a silly thing to do when I look back on it now. But at the time, I was quite young in my kind of spiritual progression, and I did sort of have a bit of an interest in the negative stuff. So I'll be talking to it. So Terry would be talking to it through me. And that was his way of doing things, as Natasha just said. He'd just say, nope, we're not having it. You're not doing this and you're not doing that. And he was very, very clear about his boundaries, really. And then it used to be quite funny because when Terry kind of would get into an argument with something negative, if he didn't get his way, he would then bang the desk. So he'd say, I'm not having it. And he'd crack the desk. And the entities actually back off because they realised that, again, the energy and the emotion that Terry was kind of bringing up was very protective over me as the medium, obviously over him personally. And these things would get pushed back quite quickly. And we used to laugh about it at times and say, how many negative things have we spoken to whilst we were kind of working on this protocol that we now use for SRA, that we've kind of had encounters with that could have been a very different picture. But, the fact that we were both quite confident and both quite strong in our kind of resolve, obviously able to push these energies backwards, basically, and put them on the other side of the fence has been quite a good thing to do. Okay, so Eric's asking, which was harder case to heal for the person who is living it? Sorry, Eric, I'm not quite sure what you mean. Which was your harder case to heal for the person who is living it? So I'm not sure if you're talking about psychic surgery or you're talking about clearing people. If you can just give us a bit more info in the chat, then I can try and answer that for you, which would be good. Has anyone else got any questions they want me to cover or anything they want to bring up, really, in the chat or chat comments? Obviously, I mentioned earlier, if anyone's just come in now, that Jono's had another operation today. He's got an infection, so he's back under the knife. So we're sending him all the best healing energy on Halloween, which will be a day that we'll never forget, basically. So, interestingly, releasing spirits. Oh, it's okay. So I'm just trying to answer Eric's question. So Eric's asking about which was the hardest case of releasing spirits, which is interesting. I mean, nowadays we don't really have any problems, to be honest, because Chen Whitehawk and that team in spirit is very strong, and there's a lot of entities that work with them. So when they turn up, I don't think we've had a case whereby we've had a possessed person that hasn't been able to be kind of depossessed in that way, really. But if I go back sort of 15 years, when I was doing this on my own and then with Terry, then of course there were people that had negative things with them and possession instance that, did take, 3, 4, 5 sessions, appointments to actually clear what was attached. Whereas now these things are cleared very quickly. But I do remember one old lady that I had one day who walked in who said that she was hearing voices and she looked the sweetest, smallest thing ever. And she came in with her daughter and they sat on the couch. I was talking to them and I kind of thought, I didn't really see a problem at all. I just kind of thought, well, obviously we'll go through a session, see what happens, because I never know generally what was going to happen. And so as I was talking to her, I put my hands on her basically from a kind of psychic surgery perspective. And as soon as I did that, her eyes went jet black, like totally black, totally whole. And I kind of looked into her eyes and felt this kind of evil, really angry sort of stare coming back. And almost like could feel sort of hatred coming off this entity that was with her. I thought, wow, that's pretty strong. And then, of course, she started to speak in a different dialect, which obviously it was one of the first times I'd experienced that. Definitely pushes your buttons a bit, really, when you've got something looking at you with jet black eyes that's like sending waves of kind of pure negative hatred and then start speaking in a different language. At that point, I remember thinking, okay, Chen, over to you, basically. So I would do this handoff with him, give him permission to come in. So he'd come in then, basically, and he was talking to this entity. And he was actually laughing because he was saying, when I haven't seen you around for like thousands of years. He was talking to another entity, a negative entity, and they were basically jesting with each other, really, that they hadn't come across, or their paths hadn't crossed for a long, long time. And then Chen basically was explaining that this entity would have to disconnect and pull its energy field away from the old lady, because he was going to do effectively an exorcism, a spiritual exorcism, in the way that we kind of understand it. And this entity was basically not kind of complying, was sort of saying that it wouldn't leave, that she'd given permission. And that kind of session went on for about an hour or something. And I remember in the end, obviously, Chen got his way, this entity disconnected. I think it was forcibly cleared and removed. And by the time I came back, I was kind of like really hot, wet with sweat. And this old lady just looked up, smiled, and she said, "What happened?" So I always remember it to this day, thinking how bizarre, isn't it, really, that when you've got a possessing spirit that literally takes over your body, the host person has no idea what's going on at all. So there was this kind of spiritual battle happening for her kind of consciousness, I guess, really. And obviously I was a medium in that. Chen was actually running the show and taking over and doing the actual work. But, I kind of laughed at the time. I thought it was really bizarre. And now, of course, when Chen comes in, I find the same. When he takes over, I have no recollection of anything that he says or does. So kind of it's interesting to see that when spirits possess people, the possessed person has no idea what's happening because their core conscious awareness isn't in the frame particularly. You've got another possessing spirit effectively taking over, and that possessing spirit seems to control the conscious awareness of the person. So it's, an interesting situation. So thanks for that question, Eric. That was good to cover. Okay, so I think from my perspective, we're probably done for today. So hopefully we've got some good ideas on what we can do tonight. Well, certainly tonight in the UK. Most of the states are 5 or 6 hours back. So I guess for you guys, it's still lunchtime. So you're starting to think about dressing up the children, painting their faces, getting some pumpkins sorted, and obviously going out for a good night, which will be good. So it's just a few ideas in this podcast really to sort of protect your space, protect your children, protect yourself, and then just to go out and have a really good night. So Maria's asking, do you have a facilitator that helps you in these cases? So the one I used to work in the past, of course, Terry was my facilitator. So when I developed this protocol with Terry, it was back 2011, we kind of started to do this work together. So we didn't really have the concept of mediums and facilitators. I was the medium and Terry was the researcher really. And then, of course, we got to the point that he was performing that facilitation role. And obviously I was a medium. So the way that we do this now from an SRA perspective is that all of the practitioners work in pairs. So there's always a facilitator and there's always a medium. So myself and Jono have done stuff, but we do things on our own. But of course, we've been doing it for 20 years and thousands of cases, so we're pretty well experienced to be able to be the medium and the facilitator. So I can talk to Chen, he obviously can tell me what he's doing. But for all of the practitioners, the only safe way of doing this is two people. Facilitator runs the session, is actually asking the questions, is talking to the guide direct. The medium's basically allowing the guide in to kind of do the disconnection and do the kind of the spiritual cleansing work from that perspective. So we don't allow our practitioners to work on their own because it's not safe to do that. And again, it's a tried and tested method. And I think this is one of the things that we kind of explain to the students and all of those that we met in New York in Ithaca week before last, really. It's very clear that, if you follow the protocol that took 10 years to develop, so it's not just been knocked up in 5 minutes, it was 10 years of research from myself, Chen, Terry, to get to a point that we can actually produce something that worked 99.9% of the time safely, because lots of people do SRT, lots of mediums can clear earthbounds and deal with entities, but we cover lots more than just those things. And obviously the more of this you do on your own, then potentially the bigger the problems that you find yourself with. Whereas the SRA protocol method is defined to be safe because it was built to be safe, and that was what kind of Terry spent the latter part of his life doing, really. So for Terry, from 2011 to 2020 when he passed away. So basically for those 9 years, his 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, Terry was basically working full time, continually writing books on spirit possession. He wrote his book, The Science of Spirit Possession, and this SRA protocol was developed, with the three of us basically on that backing. So myself, Terry, and Chen. So that was the kind of team that produced this. And obviously there's lots of other people that have come in now that are doing that. But yeah, so from that perspective, working with a facilitator medium is the only safe way to do this. And some of the practitioners that we've had come through, have chosen to try to do things differently, and things have gone very badly for them generally. And obviously we end up kind of mopping up some of the problems that come from doing that. So again, we're very keen to instill in all of our practitioners that if you want to do the work, then you do it the way that we set out, because we're protecting you and it's totally safe. But if you're going to step off the train and try and do something different, then obviously you're going to end up with problems guaranteed. So that's the kind of answer, I guess, to Maria's question. Hopefully that explains it in clear terms, Maria, really. And of course, facilitators get to talk to spirit guides, which is something that is pretty cool in itself, really. When you start talking to the spirit guide and you realise the information they have access to about the client and how they're connected to the client, it becomes very addictive to continually do this work because it is so outreaching. And of course, the results obviously speak for themselves, which is why we wake up every day and do the same thing, which is good. Okay, folks, I'm going to say goodbye. And I've been rattling on for 40 minutes. You guys go out and enjoy Halloween, and we'll catch you on the next podcast on Tuesday. So I'll say bye from me, and get well for Jono, and obviously hi from Jono.